Okay, welcome to this week's episode of KUDEN Radio. This is a take two, so we'll talk about last week's incident a little bit here, but um, anyway, we survived, and as long as James and Alan and I just threw James under the bus, as long as nobody throws some bad juju at us, then we should be okay. So anyway, back to what we initially started last week, and I don't even know that we made it in 5 minutes. So I do plan to give everybody an update on the fire that occurred in the building that the dojo is in. The dojo itself did not catch fire in any way. However, the more than extensive smoke damage and a little bit of water damage and whatnot has caused a need for adaptation. Anyway, I guess that makes it a perfect topic to add into this week's episode, right? Which is all about a ninja operating from a perspective of assuming disadvantage, which I'm not sure how many people got that memo. Couple this with, people coming back to training or finally getting around to starting it, right? With fantasies of who they were or excuses about who they are now and what they're capable of, or that killer statement. Yeah, see, but the problem is, that one. I'm very nice. I picked this up from Matsumi Sensei because he told me I should, but I smile and I nod and I say I understand. But the reality of it is, I don't care. Okay. Why? It's not because I'm a cold-hearted bastard. It's because the bad guys out there and the universe doesn't care. And truth be told, Ninjutsu doesn't care either. Okay. So this art isn't about perfection. Right? It's about surviving chaos with whatever you've got right now. It assumes you'll be the underdog, right? And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the focus for this episode, as well, again, as an update on the situation from last week, okay, which is causing this. You won't find another episode 263 out there or whatever. At least I hope not, because I tried to get rid of most of them. But this is our episode 263, take two, all right? So we'll talk about all that and more when we get back, right? So let's just go ahead and roll it, and I'll see you in a minute. So the big question is this: how are self-defense and success-minded people like us, concerned citizens worried about protecting ourselves, our loved ones, and the things we care about from the monsters we know exist in the world? How do we train in a way that gives us the skills, knowledge, and understanding we need without becoming paranoid fighters or killers ourselves, and yet still allows us to be the hero protector the world needs us to be? That's the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Jeffrey Miller, and welcome to KUDEN Radio, real training for real people in a real world. All right, instead of my normal little add-on to the intro, how about if I say this? There are several key indicators in that intro that are for the algorithms, and they're for the not quite warrior minded, but who may think they are. Because for several of those things, like, without being, right, killers ourselves and those kind of things, that's not exactly true. The intent behind those statements that I made when I wrote that was about not being that type of person. It has nothing to do with not having those types of skills or abilities. Okay. So as we move along here, anyway, James, are you still on? Who's signed in? Looks like Catastrophe draws Moz to the flame. No, I don't know if that's why people are on. I think a lot of folks that are on just because this is the thing. But I'm betting that in the back of their minds, they want to know all the juicy details, and nothing. Well, I guess it got a little wet, but it wasn't really that juicy, was it? Although we were standing there for about 4 hours wondering, what are we going to see when we walk in that building?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, is Alan on?
If he is, he hasn't said anything.
Okay, good, because I was going to tell him to keep his comments to himself. No, actually, it was nice to know, but man, maybe it was the topic. Maybe the topic drew bad juju. Maybe I should just take that on as my own responsibility. So anyway, who do we have? Who do you do? Don't tell me who you do. That was
so far. There's Trinity, Maui, Dave Fletch, Jared, and Jeffrey.
See, our regulars. Are they the, as Sherlock Holmes called his, they're the irregulars. Anyway, Dave's going to pop something in on that because he can't help himself, right? He's probably mid-typing already. As a matter of fact, most of the people that are signed in, I would be highly surprised. And the only reason why they won't now is because I said that they would. Anyway, cool. So, James, how you been this week? Did you get the smell of smoke out of your clothes?
I think so, for the most part.
Yeah, so for anybody wondering about last week, and for people in our future wondering what the hell we're talking about, or why, if you do find something out there, there might be like a, what, James, 5-minute, 10-minute clip at best of some old episode 263. Like I said, I tried to get rid of all those things from last week, and so we're redoing it. But yeah, we barely got started, and one of our guys, one of our local guys, Alan Webb, posted that the building the dojo's in is on fire. James, I think you said you did a double take because it didn't. You thought you misread it at first.
Yeah, like it's the last thing I was expecting to pop up as a comment, and we've had some doozy comments, and I'm just like,
is this something I have to filter out? Well, wait, maybe not. And then I must have said what, I don't know, 2-3 times, and then said, "Can I meet you there?" Awesome. So Alan ended up being there because he's close, and I met James there, and so there was a repair shop attached to the building that's a part of this big kind of plaza-ish building. And originally, a long time ago, I think back in the 50s, it was one of those French cleaner kind of places. Mm-hmm. And so it's been added on to multiple times, including up and out and all that kind of stuff. And it looks it. Wasn't bad. I mean, it was, painted all white, and it's all fine. But let's just say that the people in there working, we had since they moved in, we've had multiple incidents where midday I'll walk in, or I'll be working in the office in there, and all of a sudden I catch this building width of volatile solvents of the flammable nature. And I don't know if they were wearing masks or not, but the landlord obviously didn't keep that stuff in check. And so not only did they not have a sign out, and they did lots of work. I mean, the smell wasn't there all the time, and we could open the doors and get things aired out for class so that it wasn't problematic. But I'm not surprised that things happened the way they did, because I'm sure that while the building itself, the outer shell is cinder block, there was plenty of wood and inner framing and all that kind of stuff. So I'm sure all that stuff ended up in their region, got saturated with that stuff. And because James, they put out the fire pretty quickly, the fire itself, right? But they were digging out hotspots and stuff for about 4 hours.
Yeah.
3.5, 4 hours.
The rest of the time we were there, they were trying to get out hot spots, get heat out of it.
And even after they let us into our portion to try to salvage things like, I don't know, irreplaceable books by Hatsumi Sensei and whatnot in Japanese, decades decades worth of notes and things like that. That was my big concern. But even after they let us get in, we had to we were going to just move. We were going to start moving stuff out, and we had to honeycomb a bunch of our folding tables together and stack them and all that. They gave us tarps and whatnot because they were hitting things again, because they were still finding things. Yeah, they were drenching things while we were in there. So our fear was that the ceiling was going to come down, or all this water from the second floor and the roof was going to come in, because they had opened up four holes in the roof to vent heat and smoke and whatnot. So anyway, long story shortened is that by the time Alan saw whatever he saw, or I think it was his wife, so they were in there. Their business apparently is a legal chop shop. What that means is they got vehicles from people who didn't want them anymore, and they broke them down and sold parts. The people that I met, I've been told they're very nice people, but my interaction with them told me that they weren't all that quick, if you know what I mean, right? Not the sharpest sandblaster in the shop. So supposedly they had taken an engine out of a truck that they're going to be selling, disconnected the gas line, and somebody decided to fire up a grinder. James, it was a grinder through sparks. So it caused an explosion, and the garage door was open, right? The big old bay door was open. So I have to ask myself, because I wasn't there, right? I mean, we got there, 15, 20 minutes after the thing started, right? I have to ask myself either how much gasoline was on the floor, because it's the vapors, right? There had to have been a bunch of this stuff, and typically sealed up for that kind of thing. Or how saturated was the air with all this other stuff. So, but what we got from firefighters and all that was that the two people that were working in there, very lucky because if the garage door had been closed, they would be dead. So nobody was injured. Luckily, or thankfully, let's just say thankfully, because I'm not a luck person. It was a Monday night and not a Tuesday night, because had it been a Tuesday night, we would have had Shinobi Kai classes ending and the 7:30 to 8:30 class in progress when that whole thing touched off. Now, by the time we got there, like our windows, our front windows are tinted and whatnot. It used to be a fitness center, and so they put the tinting on the windows where the room where the bikes are and things, to keep the sun, because just the way the building is situated, to keep all that UV from just pounding in and baking the inside of the building. But even driving by at night, you can see inside the dojo. I mean, the headlights and the lights from the businesses around and whatnot. We have tried to do stealth training in there by just turning off the lights at night. Doesn't work, does it, James? Right? People have to go into like back rooms and changing rooms and all kinds of stuff, because the light comes in, hits those mirrors on the opposite wall, and just lights the place up. Yep. So anyway, so we could not see in. It looked like there were black curtains against the windows. And then I noticed that the door to the dojo was open, front door, and there was just this black curtain. That's how dense the smoke was. By the time we got in there, it was pretty putrid. I mean, it was not just wood. It smelled like solvent. It smelled like plastics. It's all kinds of crap to it. So, luckily, there was no damage to notes, books, those kind of things. We did have some ceiling tiles come down closest to the wall, well, actually right up against the wall where this repair shop was. But students have rallied together over this last week. Everything from a couple of folks, Shidoshi Whistler and Jess Beachy, and I think that's it as far as that goes. But providing us with some temporary storage space to get things out. And then we've had a bunch of folks, obviously James and a bunch of other students have volunteered around their work schedules and whatnot to help us move stuff. Still have some stuff in there at the front desk and in my office that's got to be out. But we are terminating our association there because there were lots of things, right? It wasn't even like we tried, but James was doing some research and whatnot while we were there. I mean, all we had to do was stand around and watch firefighters work. So there were lots of little pieces of information that we discovered, and other things that have been building. And I don't mean building as in like construction. I mean, they've been building, amassing over time, having to do with this landlord and whatnot, that this was the icing on the cake. So we can't be there anymore. He's trying to get everything together so we could move back in very quickly. But I've seen his trade-off in getting things back together. And I would absolutely need an environmental, like an air quality study before I allow classes to be back in. I would let my family or my students back in there. No matter what he says about, well, you can't smell anything. It's not about smelling. Okay. So anyway, so we've moved most of the stuff out. And then last week also, Shidoshi Whistler and I began the process of looking for temporary and or permanent locations to get classes back and rolling. I mean, luckily, this is like one full week, so this is not terrible so far. But today starts a second week. So my plan is to get classes. I don't care if they're in a park or they're in a church basement or whatever, back on very quickly, even if it's an adjusted schedule. But as the universe loves me and Mikyo works, sending out juju and all that kind of stuff, somebody called Saturday, and Shoshi Whistler and I arranged to meet with them on Sunday for a place that had become available literally a block down from we were on one corner, this is on the other corner from the dojo we were in before we moved to the current location. Same size, all that kind of stuff. It's going to take a week or so to get it where it needs to be, a little bit longer to get it to where I want it to be, but about a week, give or take, till we can get classes going on in there, and then we can be working on it to get it where it needs to go. So we're waiting for a code, city code thing. The owners applied for that today. They were supposed to hear back today, hopefully tomorrow, but we are charging forward, right? So again, everybody's the well wishes are appreciated and all that kind of stuff. No one was injured, but hopefully, and I didn't do this to make a point, but a point needs to be made. And that is, hopefully people have been able to see that under adverse situations and whatnot, the art, the skills that we get are far beyond self-defense against punches and kicks and things like that, right? Now James could lie for me, but he won't. And he was in the same ballpark as well. Did we wig out at all during that whole thing? Even when they were like taking that big ass fire hose in to our space,
yeah.
And then when they came out, it was dripping.
Yep.
Right. And so the only thing that was discussed was, right, not sure that I want to see what they've done while we're in there. However, we won't know and can't make any decisions or any plans. Like there was no suppositions, there was
Right.
no guesswork, nothing like that. That we were just in a holding pattern until we could walk in and immediately begin assessing next steps. Right. An older version of me, a younger version of me, I guess, right, would have done all kinds of guesswork, assumptions, been all focused on other things. But we did use some extra time. James used some extra time to listen in on sidebar conversations because the people that ran that little shop are family of the landlord. So we did find out what no hazmat certifications, no sign for the business at all, but no insurance either. So so I'm sure he's jumping through hoops and loops for all kinds of reasons, but we're moving very, very quickly, right? We didn't let anything. As a matter of fact, we stacked all that stuff up Monday night, and then was it Tuesday? We were right back in there again. Was it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? Had a bunch of people in there. I think Thursday, and then we've had rain off and on, and it's been a little bit difficult to manage things. So when was the last time we were in there? Was that Saturday? Friday? I don't know. If Alan's on, he'll know because he was there. But we got lots of students offering to help, other ones that are long distance, kind of lamenting that, it's one of those times where they wish they lived closer. I appreciate it. But again, I don't have time to cry. I don't have time to, be all like depressed and worn out or freaking out or looking like the guy on that slide that I made. Did you guys see that? Right? It's this guy up here in this corner with his face in his hands, and I don't have time for that. Okay. I've had some planning thoughts about what needs to be done in regards to the school being displaced, and we had 4 or 5 intro students that were set to enroll this past week and whatnot, and so hopefully we don't lose anybody in the interim. But so there will be some things down the line that need to be taken care of, and I will take action on. But for the moment, right, things have to be triaged, right? So priority was protecting as much, I've got Mikyo stuff in there, statuary, things from Japan, all kinds of stuff. So things had to be saved. First, we had to find location for classes to resume and for the dojo to get back to what we do, right? And then priority, right? And there are a couple of things that I'm layering at the moment. This week put me behind, and I finally got it finished, but I have the consulting business as well, and a new client that came in ended up being put on hold, and finally the proposal has gone out. So that'll help quite a bit. But all of my downtime has not been downtime. I have been online working on some other resources, some other programs and whatnot, as well as, in all honesty, we're going to need some help in getting things in, because there wasn't a whole lot extra laying around for a new first month's rent, right? Plus security deposit, plus. And again, I'm thankful to the students that have helped with temporary storage, but that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg. So I am putting together a special offer for anybody that can help in that direction. Thought about a GoFundMe, but anyway, but I'm not a big fan of just asking for help that way. I would rather it be a reciprocal kind of thing. So I'm putting together a couple of things that hopefully we'll get some funds in fairly quickly, so that we can get back to, again, what we do as quickly as possible. So that's what I got. I mean, James was even checking with things, and Josh, right, one of my guys that's works in that area, was checking with a local university about using some space temporarily and whatnot. So we got feelers out very, very quickly. And then Shoshi Whistler and I were looking at rentals and other properties and things like that. So, but we have certain conditions, right? can't move more than 5 miles in any direction because, right, we would risk losing students, right? So it has to be relatively close, right? The new location that we're hoping we get is 3.9 miles door to door from the current location. So, but we had there's just certain stipulations and whatnot that we had to operate on. So anyway, that's where we are. So James, any questions or comments come in based on this before I switch over to the actual topic at hand, which actually coincidentally is all about this.
There is John Golem's on, said like anything's going to stop me from making a comment.
Yeah, I've known John since 1989, so let her rip.
Terrence is on, said good evening. Jeffrey says, seems like the universe was giving a free lesson in Kajutsu.
Kajutsu, nice. I've been writing it off to, it's just another opportunity for us to practice everything from nin to strategic thinking to, bodhyaku, right? Strategic operations, those kind of things, right? So please remember, everything's a test. Never forget that. Everything's a test. Okay? Anybody's looking for long-lasting comfort and things like that, you're not living in the real world. Right? There is no such thing. Okay? There will always be things. I know there are spiritual traditions and things like that have this very popular quote: "Know the truth, and it shall set you free." But there's nothing about that statement, hard or implied, that says that once you know the truth, all pain, suffering, and problems go away. Right? Part of knowing the truth that sets you free is knowing that there is no enduring happiness. Right? Life is messy. It's not that things happen one way or the other. It's how we handle things when they happen. So there's one thing that I can take away from Hatsumi Sensei, Reverend Jikai, all these teachers that I've had, and sum it up into one thing. That's it. Right? Anyway, what else we got, James? Did John actually leave a comment other than?
Oh, he has.
Leave a comment?
His first was, let me use the southern version of Bless Their Hearts, in reference to the garage people. And his other one was...
I think they get an honorable mention for the Darwin Awards.
And he also said that we just got back to two-shitter status at the dojo.
We did. John helped us get... we had one toilet in the men's bathroom that hasn't worked for a long time, and it turned out to be the toilet itself. We could not get it to hold water, nothing. And so he donated two branded toilets. So we ended up, me and one of the other guys, he did most of the work. I just, hand tools. And so we got that repaired, and we had a matching set. So we got that repaired. Just got back to that, and so, but sorry, John. And now that we mounted them, the lease says we can't take them with us.
And Dave said it was...
Sorry. Anyway, Dave says, well, wait, which Dave?
Fletch.
Oh, okay. All right.
Said,
so let me brace myself. Go ahead. What's Dave say?
Koger ninjas and need to get a Hayes Barn dojo. Greg's on from Australia. Trinity asked, is a walkable house to dojo route again?
Yeah.
John
getting there's downhill. You know what the I mean, I live up on a hill, so getting there's literally a downhill walk. Coming back home after getting knocked around and bruised and whatnot, it's going to take a little bit more out of you.
Jimmy's stopped by, said konbanwa.
Konbanwa. Okay, desu ka?
And John said you have to remove yourself from the gene pool for Darwin status.
Yeah, for Darwin status, but they They do have honorable mentions.
Wow. And Dave said maybe it was all the fumes they were inhaling.
Dude, I don't know, but they had didn't they have like a big overstuffed lounge chair? Not a lounge chair, but like a comfy chair, like Alan's chair. Didn't they have one of those in there?
Yeah.
Right. It was like a man cave that they were using to. I thought they were fixing cars, and here James found it online. There's is it a Facebook page or something like that that they're running the business through that. So I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt as it being a legal chop shop, but after seeing what I've seen and hearing and getting information about other little behind the scenes kind of things, if I don't see pink slips, then I cannot say for sure. So anyway, is that what we have? We're good?
That's it. Trinity just said my butt hurts just thinking about that. Apparently walking back uphill.
Oh, the walking. Only if you do correct ninja walking. If you walk like everybody else, it'll just be your feet. And maybe your back, your spine, your neck. So a lot of people have the headaches that they do and whatnot, right? Neck and back problems. So, but I wear arch supports, which is a huge problem, right? Huge problem, right? Arch supports create a crutch that actually take away certain muscles, the use of certain muscles in your lower legs and actually all the way up on the outside of your thigh that keep your arch built the way it is. So I am either in socks or I am barefoot or I am in shoes that have little to no arch support. And when I have to wear something, I think I have a couple of things that dress shoes or whatever that I could not get them without an arch support. I get the minimum that I have to get. The soles have to be very, very flexible. And I don't mean like it's a dress shoe but has a sneaker sole underneath. I mean it's a classy dress shoe. But one of the first things I check is flexibility, all that kind of stuff. And if I have to wear something where I can feel that under my arch, I'm very, very mindful about making sure that I'm walking even more using or toward the stealth walking kind of things where you're walking flat of the sole or flat of the heel around that thicker part of the underside of the foot, right to the side of the arch, not the side of the foot, but the side of the sole, and then to the kidney bean shape of the ball of the foot, and then down. The foot should go down this way. Right. That's something that should be an all the time training. Anytime we're walking anywhere, right? People often ask, when are we going to work on stealth walking? Walk on stealth walking every time you walk, because if you don't, if you ever need to do stealth movement, your leg muscles, lower back, and your ass muscles will burn out very, very fast because they're just not going to be conditioned for that. So whenever we walk, we do ninja walking, right? Whenever we run, we do ninja running. Whenever we sit, stand, kneel, face mecha, dance, whatever, right? You do it ninja style, right? Well, I've never learned that. Not my fault. Right? So anyway, anything else before I switch over?
Trin just said, I'm still learning to walk.
Yeah, I had one teacher. Well, Shoshi Malmstrom. He used to look at people, and one of his key phrases were when he'd yell at somebody to fix something, and they'd go, "But I know who you learned it from. How does it feel to be fill in the blank with their current age, and finally learning how to do it right?" Okay. So, somebody else teaching something, not a crutch. Somebody else, letting you get away with something, not a crutch. I had a student one time that came to me from some other place, not a different martial art, this one. And the first time in my class, he stepped back into Ichimonji. Some of you guys know this story. Stepped back into Ichimonji. His hip, knee, ankle alignment was so far out of whack, right? Like his knee dipped in. So so if that's his hip and that's his knee and that's his foot, I know it's a big ass club foot. Anyway, instead of these things being in an alignment, right? This is the crotch side. It dipped in like that. So when he stepped back into Ichimonji, right, instead of having that nice plane with the thigh and the calf dropping straight down, the foot being under things, right, the knee dipped in, and I'm like, oh, we got to fix that, because one of these days you're going to step back into Ichimonji and you're going to blow that meniscus right out. That's that padded buffer. It's part of the mechanism on the side of the knee joint that keeps your knees from breaking sideways, right? Keeps them in a hinge joint kind of configuration. And what he said next to me what he said next to me was, my old teacher said that was fine, that was natural for me, and we're supposed to be doing things that are natural, and so that was fine. And I got to second-degree black belt with that, so I'm not changing anything. And I said, there's a huge difference between natural and habitual. And habitual forces your body to adapt and change. And what that change means is it grows to accommodate bad shit, bad habits, right? We're very versatile, right? We can break ourselves for years and not know it. And then when something actually happens, we blame that particular incident, when that was the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back, or the last stone in the bucket to make the rope break, or whatever analogy you want, right? And so I said, look, you're gonna have problems, right? I'm just telling you from a safety standpoint. He just stuck to that whole natural, quotation. Sensei said. I know what Sensei said, right? Somebody didn't get the whole lesson, right? Not more than 2 weeks later, I get a call. He's done with training. Okay. He had dinner with his family, went to stand up from his chair at the dining room table, and his knee gave out sideways. Not only did the meniscus tear, the whole leg buckled sideways. He had what we call a Joe Theismann, right? Where the, upper leg, knee, lower leg, he had one of these. Okay. Shredded the whole thing. And instead of, getting repaired like a lot of us have, and then getting back to training, he just, he was done. I'm never one for I told you so. I don't need to say it. You know what my warning was. I know what my warning was. I'm not the gloater. I don't need to. This is not a trophy like, see, no. That was the universe slapping you in the ass because you continued to want to do it your way. Not you guys, because you're all enlightened. But, just because I got the need on, right? And it was fine, so I'm not changing it. Okay, well, I wasn't the one that got you to need on, so it's wrong. Right? But you do you. So anyway, but yeah, just blew his knee out. Right? So you got to be careful with these things. Anyway, all right, let's get back to our regularly scheduled program. We don't have a set location, so if I bail this time, it's because whatever, God, the universe, whatever forbid, is my house on fire. But I don't want to say that. Well, I already said it, because the fire that just affected the dojo, from a lot of you guys know this is the second fire in three and a half years, if I push it that far, that have affected my wife and I. First one was the house itself, now the dojo, and she was there. She threw clothes on and went as well. And as soon as that smoke smell hit, James, right? She called her brother in Texas to help with the trauma and anxiety, because all that shit just came flooding back and stuff. So, yeah. Anyway, so let me just bring up my notes here, and we'll get back on track. How about that? Actually, we're not getting back on track. We're just going to do the episode as it was supposed to happen before the oh shit moment happened. All right. So the premise or the theme of this episode, just in case you missed all the promotions and you just sign on and whatnot, is that the ninja trains for disadvantage. The ninja assumes disadvantage, right? And that's why our training is designed to the principle is to win before the fight even begins. What the hell does that mean, right? Well, it's not just preparation, it's not just awareness, it's not just all these obvious things that people would think about, right? It begins with assuming that we'll be the underdog. I have never, and I've trained in an encyclopedic list of different martial arts. I have never trained in a martial art or in a self-protection system or a life system or anything that at its base assumed that you would be the underdog. And the art made algebra right. You know what I mean by that? Okay. I've heard lots of my fellow students coming up through school and whatnot, right? Like algebra, that's a bunch of bullshit, man. There's no such thing as negative numbers. Okay. Well, I get it that it's an abstract because you don't have the thing in your hand, but yeah. Okay. This art proves abstract. It proves that algebra is right. Okay. Even before we get to the martial arts side of things, think about going to a store. You're going to buy a new sword, right? The sword's $2,000, right? You have $75. You're either buying a $75 sword or you are minus, right? $1,925. There's a negative there, right? So what I was taught in this art is that there are many things that you will have to do in an actual attack scenario, not the bumping shoulders, two bulls deciding they're going to go at it and things like that. I'm talking about the kind of shit that the ninja developed this art for and that we could quite likely find ourselves in. And that is starting at a negative, and you will have to do a couple of core things correctly just to get to zero, just to get to an even neutral scenario before you can start taking the advantage, right? So the way this art's designed is we strip his advantages to do the neutralizing, because to do it the other way assumes normal fighter mentality. And if he's already bigger, stronger, faster, has better, sharper, whatever weapons, has more people, whatever, you can't up your game. You can only go so fast. You can only be so strong, whatever, right? I get it. Die trying. Well, fantastic. But the ninja are like, okay. If we're dying, it's because it still served the purpose. We still accomplished the mission. Right. So here's my problem. Right? Let me be blunt, right? Because I hear this all the time. And some of you who are my students now, I'm sure you're sick of hearing it because you know I'm not talking to you anymore. And if I am, somebody's head's really thick, right? But if you're waiting until you're ready, if you're waiting until you're back in shape or more flexible or whatever your story is, more time, more money, more, right? It's just, I need to wait until things settle down, whatever, right? Then one, you're training for a fantasy life that doesn't exist. And for a lot of the things that people have that are problems, right? Arthritis and injuries and PTSD and all kinds of things from a life well lived or not, right? That life doesn't exist anymore. the one that often people are trying to get back to. They fantasize about doing this art like they're still in their late teens or their early 20s. Well, I'm not sure I can still do. We'll get to that, right? The ninja doesn't wait for perfect conditions, right? As a matter of fact, the ninja hopes for terrible conditions in many cases, right? If we look at the Tonko no Jutsu, the secret of secrets within the Togaku-ryu, between the Goton Po, the Uda Goton, but specifically the Tento Jupo, right? There are these 10 elements. So the total, there's 20 generally categorized areas of training, right? That have to do with escape and evasion and all the ninja stuff, deception, those kind of things, okay? But there are 10 elements that are elements. Rain, snow, sky, those kind of clouds, those kind of things, right? And that's what they're named. And so if they're not being used overtly, like steering by the stars, right? Directional kind of things like that, or using the snow for stealth and things like that. They're being used to inhibit and screw up the attacker's ability to do things, right? So the ninja doesn't wait for the rain to stop before going on the mission. He plans his mission so he'll get there when the rainstorm starts. That's part of Tenmon, right? Meteorology, being able to read the weather, right? Because everybody else is going to be hunkered down and inconvenienced and pissy and whatnot, right? Because they're on guard duty or they're doing whatever and it's freaking raining or they're hiding inside. Okay. What better time to move around? And you've got all this white noise, right? The rain hitting different surfaces and this chaotic sound and the wind and whatnot, right? You don't have to be completely silent. Okay. So it doesn't, the ninja doesn't plan for perfect conditions. The ninja assumes pain, fatigue, right? Being exhausted, injury, loss, even confusion, right? And doesn't just operate anyway, but trains anyway. Right? So some examples of this today, right? We've got things like vets that have returned from bad places, right? Or just maybe they didn't go to bad places, but they, the service didn't do their body well when they were in, right? But, they used to be in elite shape and now they've got arthritis or injuries or whatever, right? We've got parents juggling kids, jobs, sleep deprivation, all kinds of things, right? And they're finding time to train, right? Students chasing the ghost of their 25-year-old self, lamenting that, these things, right? And then there's the trap of, I can't do it right, so why try at all? Yeah, that one I can't fix, okay? Because I'm not here to talk anybody into anything. That's called a used car salesman, and I'm not doing it, okay? As a matter of fact, I'm already nicer than I'll have to. I already shared it. There was a post on Facebook that Duncan Stewart, he's from New Zealand, he posted. It was an article from an article or whatever that Hatsumi Sensei had put out. And I think it was in one of the old newsletters or whatever about. He was talking about his training with Takamasa Sensei and how everything hurt. Not afterwards. While the training was going on, everything hurt. All right. And Takamasa Sensei would say things like, yeah, I understand. In Toda Sensei's dojo, we called the what do you call the dojo? James, do you remember? Not the butcher shop. What the hell was it called? The
Slaughterhouse.
That's it. The slaughterhouse. Right. That was the nickname for Toda Sensei's dojo. Right. You realize how many people in this art today would not fucking train if that's the way we trained? And our stuff is more painful without being brutal. Our stuff is more painful than what most are doing, because that soft training has quite the allure to it. Right? Anyway, so we'll get into this thing, but the biggest takeaway up to this point that I need you to really think about, because everybody's all about jumping on Ninjutsu because, man, look at all the skills, look at all the tools, look at all the stuff, right? Ninja are like trained to overcome and handle like the situations that would make regular warriors piss themselves. Yeah, okay. But their training has to do that. Their training has to be as harsh, if not more harsh, than the stuff they're going to have to deal with. And yet people won't come to class because they're tired, or they won't come to class because again, it's been a grueling day, or I don't feel right, or whatever. I'm here to tell you, unless you're unconscious, there's always something you can do. Right? I did training flat on my back with a broken back in a rehab center. Nope, wasn't taijutsu. Well, kind of it was, because that gave me an opportunity to relearn walking, relearn or be more mindful about balance and whatnot, because my legs shut down. They didn't work. So it's an opportunity for training, not an opportunity for laying around and lamenting or being pissed off because I can't do things and whatever, right? Well, see, the problem is, no, that's not a problem. It's an opportunity. And I know people don't like that, but the people who don't like that are looking for excuses, right? I don't like when somebody says this is not a problem, this is an opportunity, when it actually is a problem, because these things are not mutually exclusive. Two things can be true at the exact same time. Okay? I cannot want to seriously damage another human being, but have to, and know I'm going to take on negative karma because this person has to be stopped, and I'm the one with the skills to do it. This is not a zero-sum game, and this is not an either-or kind of thing. Right? So I get it. Right? I get it. But if we don't train through the pain, the fear, the whatever, or figure out how to do the skills differently, or to come up with a list of things that we're just not going to be able to do anymore. So if we end up in a situation where we might have to do something like that, how can we? Right? As a for instance, in our module 4, there are 2 techniques. One is called Kerisui. Some of you guys probably already know it. And one is called Ashidome. So Kerisui is leg scoop, and Ashidome is leg stop. Okay. Both of these techniques directly attack the base knee of an attacker who is kicking to misalign the knee or to trap it so that his kicking action and torque rips his knee assembly apart. And he continues to break himself, that joint, as he falls down. Not something you're going to see in soft training. Okay? So the actual technique from the scrolls, Kerisui, right, can be done against a roundhouse kick, typically in the scrolls done against a stomp kick and whatnot. But you take a step forward and drop to the ground, placing your hands down as though you're going to go into a forward shoulder roll, meeting his base knee, right, just above the cap itself with your shoulder, and go into it like you're going to do a forward shoulder roll. So all your body weight, right, just blocking it and knocking it backwards. So his torquing action takes that thing apart. Only takes about 65 pounds per square inch to blow out an adult male knee. I don't care if it's me, Schwarzenegger, whatever. A little bit harder for Schwarzenegger because, or the big guys that have big thighs and stuff like that, because their stabilizer muscles are a bit stronger, but they're still bad angles. And the meniscus sides are where those things are because there's no muscles to build up, right? Just like punching somebody in the throat. You can have a Golden Glove boxer, right, who their neck muscles are such and their shoulder muscles are such that it looks like they have no neck, so you can't do a shuto to the neck, right? But there's nothing here. From here this way, there's nothing that can be built up that protects the trachea. So if I slide a Shikan Ken in there or a Boshiken, right, he can't build things up enough. Either way, right? But it only takes 25 pounds or 65 pounds per square inch to blow that out, right? A mid-sized child could fall in your knee and send you to the operating room, right? So that's that one, right? Keisui Ashidome. Its version is so Keisui moves to the inside of the kick to go for the base leg. Ashidome, leg stop, steps to the outside and under that kick that's coming, right? And we move in and then punch or strike with a stick or whatever the meniscus side, the inside of the knee, to knock it out of position, right? And what keeps us standing as human beings, remember I showed you that design or that little drawing, right? That student came to me and was only a student for like 2 weeks. So he had grown his leg out of position. It's the alignment between our hip joint, our knee, and our ankle that allows us to stand and to function well and freely, right? Free movement, right? Displace one or more of those joints from that natural correct alignment, and the person falls down. See, knowing that one thing will help anybody who's working ashikage or any of these joint manipulations to the legs to take somebody down. Should make your job easier because it's not about force. It's not about pushing harder or whatever. If you're working harder, it's wrong, right? It's about displacing that natural alignment between those three joints, and the person will fall down. These techniques are designed to shut somebody down quickly on a battlefield who is armed with a 36-inch, 28 to 36-inch razor blade that will kill you. And so how do we take him out of the fight? How do we take him out of the battle and move on to the next one? Okay, instead of doing 2-minute rounds, 5-minute rounds, this bullshit fighting. People can fight any way they want. But on a battlefield, try doing the boxing ring or MMA or BJJ shit when somebody can just walk by and stick you with a poker or shoot you in the face or whatever, right? It works in a context as long as everybody's playing by the same rules, okay? But on a battlefield, you want to take somebody out, 1 or 2 moves. Actually, what is it? It's, the rule of thumb is 4 moves or less, 10 seconds or less. Okay? If it takes longer than that, you start losing faster, exponentially so. Okay? So this is Ninjutsu, right? Because you're at a disadvantage, right? If you don't put him down in a move or two, the longer this engagement lasts, the more chances of him bringing his weapon to bear on you or getting you with something or you slipping or tripping or whatever. So these things are designed, right? So I slip under, punch the inside of his knee to misalign the knee joint while he's doing this kick, which now puts torque and puts his body weight on that knee joint assembly in a way it's not built for, and his own action and body weight shears that joint apart. All you have to be prepared for is the loud, blood-curdling scream that ensues when it's happening. Okay? Or not, because some people just right? Everything just stalls. But I don't care. He's down on the ground. Okay? He can't chase me. right? He's Monty Python's Black Knight style, right? He can be talking smack all he wants, but he won't be because he'll be screaming. Okay. Either way, those are the two. That's how those models are normally done. Okay, but my hips and knees and the damage to my back, I'll roll if I absolutely have to. Like if I'm being thrown, I have no choice. I mean, I have a choice, but I have no choice, right? But to willingly do that again and again and again in the dojo for Trenton, I'll be inoperable for a week or more. That's unacceptable. Okay. So my Henka, my training has to revolve around how do I do this? How do I still do the same thing to those knee joints during a kick without squatting, without doing that kind of maneuver, right? The answer is walk in. And Katie Squee, the standing version, we teach you how to, not how to do it in that context, but we give you the skill against a stationary leg, right? Against a grabbing attack in Mod 1, right? Katie Squee, Ashidome, leg stop, okay? The joint gets misaligned, right? In this case, with a punch, with a strike. So how about if I just get out of the way and then punt the damn thing from underneath? I get the same effect. Or I smack it with a hanbo or whatever. I don't have to duck down. I don't have to do anything. I just have to avoid the kick, have a momentary access to that knee joint, and the rest is on his insurance policy. And that makes me laugh. Anyway, so this art is about adaptability, but adaptability comes out of this assumption of disadvantage, right? It's the ninja's strategic premise, right? And we have to train that way, right? I have students get injured or they're tired or whatever, and they want to take time off or have some surgery or what. Okay, get past the swelling part and whatever. We don't want to exacerbate anything, but you're going to be off for how long while that's healing correctly? Great. Okay. So since it's a knee, okay, we're going to do chair training. You're going to learn how to defend against somebody who's attacking you in a chair. Well, I don't want to do that because that's what everybody else is doing. Yeah, but everybody else can fucking walk. If you're attacked, you're going to be in a chair. So why are you not training to defend yourself from a chair? Well, because everybody else. Well, you're not everybody else at the moment. So what you're telling me is you're willing to allow yourself to have a blind spot and to set yourself up for failure because it's not your definition of right. I thought this was ninjutsu. The attacker, the context of the situation, the scenario determines what the fight looks like. We determine what the fight ends like, not the scenario itself. Okay. So again, we assume disadvantage, and this in and of itself is what allows us to start winning before the fight happens. Okay? Think about all the work that a mugger or attacker or whatever will do to manipulate a situation to give themselves the greatest advantage, right? Assuming that if they don't know you, you've never trained and you're just like every other victim they've ever gone after. Or if they know that you train in the martial arts, their assumption is that you fight like everybody else, which is why their strategy is designed to screw that up. And then they meet you. And because you've trained to handle or you've done training. This is our black belt training, right? All the stuff leading up to black belt is the tools. Black belt training, it's more scenario based, right? How fucked up can this situation be? Okay. And you have to do it. Okay. And because you train that way, when he shows up with his great idea, he finds out it wasn't so great of an idea. And even if we can't do what we would normally do because we train for adaptability and adaptation, then we just adapt to the situation. Okay? Yeah, but what if you can't? Well, then you die. Okay. What if he does something that you can't survive? Duh. True story. Way back in my training days, in the dojo, Stephen Hayes' dojo, way back. This is when we were getting people from all kinds of martial arts and all kinds of different places and whatnot. And some actually registered under false names. We had all kinds of jokes. Anyway, so we're doing these defenses. I think we were doing maybe like gun defenses, or I don't know what we were working on. Maybe it was a space between two segments, but it was a Q&A kind of thing. And this guy, he poses this what if question, right? What if the guy's got you from behind, he's got you in like a triangle choke, and he's got your back all arched, right? And he's got a gun up against your back, right? And he's like already shot you in the kidney, and he's about to pull the trigger again and blow out your spine. What do? Shidoshi goes, you die. This guy's face just dropped. Like, what? He goes, you can't survive everything. I mean, I guess you could do something with your last second or two of life. What you could do is reflect on how you got in that situation to begin with. But unless you believe in reincarnation or rebirth, and it's actually true, probably not getting a do-over. But we have encountered scenarios like that. We've taken what ifs that people have come up with in class, and while you die, okay. But how many opportunities do you have leading up to that point before he pulls that trigger where you might have been able to do something? Like he's applying the single arm triangle choke. He's arching your back, right? Or, I mean, if you already shot you and you didn't drop, right? How can you operate? Well, I don't know. I've never been shot. Yeah, but there's this searing pain. Okay. And so you could have somebody take a Boshiken and just, they're kind of a third wheel in that technique. Do simple things because you can't do the whole fight, right? But what if they just pressed their hand against the front of you and then shoved in to put you in this weird position, right? While he's putting the triangle choke on. How can your body move from there? Okay. If he's arching your back and pulling you back, why have you not done a sitting break fall into Asuka back in against his legs, which will at least lever the knees and cause him to fall back, muzzle goes toward the sky, and that gives you some operating room, right? Or do a sitting break fall, Tachinage, right? And break his knee out from under him. That'll change his attention, right? But, well, where does that come from, right? That's not just, okay? Shinden Furoryu, is it the Daken Taijutsu? Jutaijutsu, I think, right? Has some techniques on the whole first scroll. The techniques all have, I think, at least 3 variations, but they're not called henka. They're called waza. So there's the core technique, and then there are, from my experience, there are 2 models that are variations. I've seen as many as 3 or 4. And also there's models where you're doing it with a sword in your sash or whatever, right? Same kata. And remember, with a waza or a henka, for it to be correct, it has to use the same principles and concepts. It has to have the same strategic outcome, right? As the name, right? As the core technique. Otherwise, it's something else. Doesn't make it wrong, just doesn't make it that thing. So, for example, there is a throw counter. I name it escapes me at the moment. I'm thinking Nichigeki, but something also tells me that's not it. Either way, he's coming in to do a seonage, right? Or some throw variation like that, right? Where he's caught you, he's stepping in front of your body, bring you over, shoulder throw, over the back, that kind of thing, right? And so there are 4 points in time that you have an opportunity to beat that technique or to survive that technique. Beginning with when he grabs you and goes to shoot in to break your balance. That's where it starts. Okay. And that's just like turning like a door. So because the throw depends on your momentary resistance for him to get the leverage that he needs to throw you. And so when you take that away, hit the muscle contraction he's doing to scoop you causes him to land on his back flat, and it attacks the lungs from the outside, right? I know I've experienced that in real time, and 1/2 to 3/4 speed is more than enough for me. Thank you very much. And if you don't have your break falls hardwired to where your chin goes to your chest, your teeth, your molars go together, and your tongue is on the roof of your mouth, you will slam your skull into the floor or into the ground. Right? So there's that. There's the moment where you're coming up onto his back. So there's a version of the technique for beating that throw from there. There is the point in time where you're going over his shoulder. And then the last one is you've been thrown and you're going to have to use ukemi. Okay. So 4 points in time. Well, which one do you use? Well, you learn all of them, but what you have to learn is you will use the one where you happen to your brain recognizes the opportunity in that moment and acts on that. I have those things beyond 5th Dan. And the reason for that is this is the same kind of idea or setup for students who are testing for taking the Saki test. The Saki test, it requires 2 skills. One, sensing danger that you cannot see or hear. Okay. And 2, moving without winding up to do it, or without stiffening up and then having to relax to go. Right. So you can move directly, right? And you can sense unseen danger. For these techniques, for what we're talking about here, and this is why Shinden Fudo Ryu and these kind of things are beyond 5th Dan, is they also require 2 skills. One is one born of Kamai, but instead of being seen as a posture or, God forbid, a stance, right? It's being aware of your condition, right? Recognizing an opportunity and being able to act on that opportunity in that moment, because not even a quarter of a second, right? A microsecond after that recognition, if you have not already moved, you're in a different position because those throws happen really, really fast. So the moment you pick up on the opportunity to go, so if he surprises you on entry, you've lost number 1. You have the opportunity when you're on his back, but you're only going to be there for a microsecond. Okay. But if you miss that one, you're going to be coming over his shoulder, getting slammed into the ground. Okay. But if you miss that one, then it's we have to be able to shape our body to receive the ground. Otherwise, because the combat version of these throws are not conducive to ukemi. The combat versions take away his ability to take ukemi. And if you cannot take ukemi because this guy's really, really freaking good, you better have these other options. Okay? So, but all of our techniques assume disadvantage. How the hell did he get into position to be able to throw, ski, a kick, or get his hands on us, right? In the first place, if we're supposed to be aware and managing distance, so he has to work for it. Okay? So we're already at a disadvantage. A kumiuchi, that's that judo setup. Yeah, that's that judo setup, right? That goes all the way back. Kumiuchi originated with fighting in armor. You're trying to move around somebody who's wearing his own body weight on his body. So twice his body weight. And you're trying to do it while wearing your own body weight on your body. It's kind of a screwy position. Okay. But kumiuchi is a neutral starting position as well, because both people, at least one person, right, is trying to keep the other one from getting at their weapons or from being able to attack. If we're not training from that perspective, then we're assuming that this is even Steven or whatever rhymey thing you want to do. Okay. A wrist grab is not just a wrist grab. Anybody who knows how to grab or has big hands or is strong or whatever, and they just happen to get a hold of your hand, wrist, forearm assembly to where you can't flex your wrist, right? And they have a certain pressure on that at a certain angle, which is just downward at a slight diagonal, right? Locks up your elbow and your shoulder. The first move in all of our wrist grab escapes is to unlock the wrist so you get your shoulder and elbow back, right? So all the techniques are, how the hell do I get out of a situation I'm not supposed to be able to get out of? Not, he grabs my wrist, as in the skin bag, right? That's nothing, okay? You don't need 2,000-year-old secrets to get away from shit, okay? But he grabbed me, yeah, okay? So what? How does the ninja think about that? Right? Well, the ninja thinks about it from the perspective of, well, shit, I know exactly where that hand is. He can't hit me with it unless he lets go. So same thing with bear hugs. Look at him tying up his arms. Oh, and his legs, because he has to be able to lock down to hold me. Interesting. Right? So we've got to get out of this mindset that starts before we even go to training, that today's not a good day. Okay. But we're supposed to be training for when today's not a good day. Right? So again, we go back to this thing. The ninja does not train for the perfect fight. He or she, right? Don't want to leave out the kunoichi. He trains for the worst case scenario because that's the only one that matters. Right? Every technique, every kata, every evasion assumes you're one or more of the of what I'm about to say here, right? You're smaller, you're slower, you're hurt, you're outnumbered, you're in the dark, literally or tactically, right? Being in the dark as in, like, I don't know what he's able to do. And you don't have time to warm up, right? You can't tell him, today's not a good day. Can you come back to, you know what, tomorrow's not going to work either. Can we make it the second Thursday of next week? Right? I have to say, again, there's a quote. There's all these fucking quotes circulating on the internet, and everybody likes to pass them around because it's like cool. Like, they're these quotes. Yeah. Have we stopped to think about what's behind the quote? This one in particular. Many practice martial arts as though they'll always be calm, always be in control, and always be on balance. But life and death are chaos. Period. Huh? Training is practice for when we are in the shit. We start people slowly in a controlled environment and those kind of things, but at some point things have to be pushed. At some point, whatever inhibitions, fears, lack of the inability to be in a situation where we're not in control, whatever it is, right? When I'm injured, still training. I've trained with a cast on my arm. I've trained with, legs not working so well, knees not working so well, because that's the body that I have at that moment. None of us has any guarantee that when you leave class on any given day, some asshole's not going to jump you. Maybe not outside the dojo, but that's the thing about violence, right? From our perspective, from the potential target, I'm not going to use the word victim, but to the bad guy, we're the victim, right? From our perspective, violence is random. We never know where it's going to happen, what it's going to look like, any of that stuff, what skills we're going to need. Okay. From the attacker's perspective, I know people say we just snapped. Nobody, well, I take that back. There is a minuscule percentage of people that actually just snap. Most people don't just snap. There is a moment where they say, fuck it. And they no longer care about repercussions or consequences. Okay. They drop the chains that have been holding them back through their anger management issues and things like that. But virtually no one just snaps. What that means is every time this individual has gotten angry or has dealt with a perceived slight that somebody has, thrown at them or whatever, right? They've run a chain of events in their head. They've got at least one, if not more, plans of action should they ever decide today's the day. When an attacker shows up, right, we will not be in a position where we just watched the teacher demonstrate a technique and now we're with our partner duplicating the technique, or in a controlled randori situation or whatever, where, we already know. We know that training partner. We know their belt level. We know their habits, those kind of things, because we've been training with them for a while. The best person to train with is a white belt that just got started, because they don't have the dojo script yet, right? So, but when a real person shows up, when a real attacker shows up, the only thing we know about that person is what we can see: height, size, clothing, that kind of thing. And they want to hurt us. We don't know how. We don't know how much experience they have at hurting people. We don't know what their favorite moves are, right? Yet we need to do things to figure those things out, right? We don't know how far they're willing to go. We don't know if this guy's just an asshole mugger that just, if I give him $5, he'll go away, or if this guy got out of prison and he isn't letting anybody live to testify to send him back, right? If we're not training around these conditions with this mindset, right? I mean, that in and of itself is a huge disadvantage. Think about the advantage you have about knowing your training partner, or knowing you're in a safe environment, even if you're sparring, or guys that are in knockout dragout fights. There's still a time limit, or there's rules or safety mechanisms or whatever, right? This guy knocks me out. If he jumps on me and starts pounding me into somebody's going to jump in, because that's the way it works, right? Could I get killed? Yeah. Right? Is it a good probability? No. Okay. Probably going to have a few 100,000 less bile cells to be thinking about things tomorrow. However, But an actual situation on the street? Okay. So it's not even just the skills, right? If we don't know, if we don't have a list of things that we won't know, then we have no reason to train in ways that would allow us to develop strategic or tactical ways to move or maintain distance or whatever, or things to look for to uncover as many of these unknowns and move them to the realm of the known before he can get a shot off. Right? We're just not going to end up doing it. I truly do believe that most martial artists have no idea how disadvantaged they will be when the fight they're in isn't what most people normally define as a quote unquote fight. Okay. Anyway, before I move into the next section, James, let me get off my notes here. Questions, comments, complaints. Is James still on? He is. Look at him. There he is. Ta-da! Look at that. Super Ninja.
Let's see. Alan's on, said he tuned in late, but he has no bad news tonight.
Dude, I know where you live. Marine or no Marine. I'll bring crayons. That'll disarm him right there. It's an Army Marine joke. Don't worry about it. Anyway.
Chris McLaurin's on, says just watching really sucks.
Just watching what?
Just watching really sucks. I think it meant like if you're injured and you're just watching.
Yeah.
Class. So.
But while you're watching, are you watching how the technique is done, or are you watching how the attacker moves in, or are you watching or paying attention to the scenario from the perspective of somebody that, I mean, if you did act and you've got major medical concerns, you could die. So how do you manipulate things, right? Maybe this would be a good time to study the psychological manipulation and things like that, right? Asking the person, because we'll do it sometimes in class and whatnot, but the number of questions or things that I could say to somebody to confuse them, to get them to pick a different target. Next time you're out at a restaurant, or I take my wife dancing and stuff, so sometimes we go places where they're getting fewer and fewer, but we were just out a week ago, give or take. No, was it 2 weeks ago? Maybe it was just before the fire happened. But places, people walking around all over the place. Okay, so be a good time to people watch. I was taught that a long time ago, right? Anytime you're in a area, a mall or a store of any site, at a fair, whatever, right? Treat it like it's a people zoo and watch people move around, watch them interact, watch how they walk. What? Because you're training your brain to watch for certain things, right? Can you, if you recognize somebody who's looking in your direction, can you maneuver yourself while you're walking or whatnot that people cross between you and them, and that can be a blinder to get to another spot, that when that area where they were looking at you clears, not only are you gone from there, but they can't find you again. Right? Again, everybody is training like this is, we've got nothing until there's fistfights. And the rest of the stuff is just interesting curiosities. It's easy to see why Ninjutsu got diluted to not even Ninpo Taijutsu. I mean, I know why we were working on Budo Taijutsu for a long time, but it's now down to that. And then people took the name for everything, Ninjutsu, and slapped it over that. At least the honest ones don't even say that. They just say, I do Bujinkan, which we already had an episode about that. Right? It's like, instead of saying I'm eating, Toastio cereal or Cheerios or whatever, right? I do Kellogg's, right? Or I'm eating Kellogg's. I hope not. That's a freaking family, right? That's a whole different story. Do they smell like smoke? Anyway, so nice to say I can make you laugh there, James. What else you got? It's usually when somebody else is being hurt. Nice.
Josh is on and said, as you know, I do some gymnastics and host an open gym for adults. Hurts a lot more as a 45-year-old. LOL, but it's still fun. You guys are all invited. First Friday of the month. But anyway, lots of folks express interest, but the biggest barrier is mental. I don't know if I can do that stuff anymore. I can't get away. I'm not in shape enough, etc. Even though there are literally no expectations and you can literally do whatever you want, even if that's just lying on the mat and staring at the ceiling.
Wow. When I was a cop, I was in places where people were doing that. Funny smells, body odor. Yeah. Had to be careful where you walked. Mm-hmm. Don't fall down, for God's sake. You'll come up looking like a porcupine. Jesus Christ. Anyway. That was before all the safety mechanisms. Like, cops and EMTs and stuff like that are wearing gloves now. If we were wearing gloves, it was fucking wintertime. Other than that, yeah, no. So, that it?
Alan said he's got a book for those crayons.
Oh, good. I hope it's not too complicated. Anyway.
Chris said he's taking notes, sir.
Like, I would doubt that. They're going to end up on 3x4, 4x6 cards or 3x5 cards.
And he's shaking them at the screen right now. I'm sure.
What? The cards? Right here, sir. They're right here. I love my students. I live in a country where I can't love them to death, and we can't have a slaughterhouse because, I want to train. No, you don't. Right? You want to feel like you are training, but we don't want to take it too far because that would be uncomfortable. Reminds me of when I came back for leave at one point. I was a military cop, and I think I was stationed in what was then West Germany, and we're talking about, like, living there made me a believer in seatbelts. Yes, they had mandatory seatbelt laws. However, they also have no speed limit on the Autobahn. And there was a generally accepted saying among all Germans that you only ever have one accident on the Autobahn. And it's not because you only ever have one accident. It's because that's going to be the accident that, right? So, but I was telling him about this thing, and he goes, I know I should wear it, but it, like, chafes right here, and it's really uncomfortable. And I went through this long diatribe about what's uncomfortable microseconds after your car comes to a stop, and you don't, because Einstein was right? Theory of relativity. You're going down the road at 55 miles an hour. Yes, you are going down the road at 55 miles an hour, not just the car. When that car comes to an abrupt stop, you are still traveling 55 miles an hour. And so, getting your chest impaled on the steering column or going through the windshield, now that's uncomfortable. And I don't know that it ever convinced him, but anyway. So let me shift back over here again, and we'll come back to other questions. All right. So Let's revisit some of these, what I'm going to call modern student pitfalls, right? The fantasy versus function kind of thing, right? And so I know people hate when I do this because somehow I sound like some eternal optimist. It's not about an optimist. I'm not an optimist. I'm also not a nihilist, right? So it's not, I want everything to burn down, but I don't think everything is freaking, rainbows and unicorn farts. Sorry, John Golem. Somebody had to tell you it was true. Anyway, right? This is about being a realist. And, I've heard pessimists say, oh, I'm not a pessimist, I'm a realist. No, you're a fucking pessimist. Everything that comes out of your mouth is the negative of things. Now, you guys, you're all enlightened, all right? But bear with me, okay? So, somebody might say, I'll train when I get in shape, right? So, this is a delusion-based delay, okay? Because the question is, well, how long is that going to take? And what if somebody attacks you now, right? Who's more likely to be attacked? By an opportunistic thug. Somebody built like Schwarzenegger or his younger days, right? But somebody built that looks like they can handle themselves, or the middle-aged or older guy that is not in shape, or girl that's not in shape, can barely move, looks like they need a cane but isn't using one, that kind of thing, right? This is the shape you have, right? I had friends that gave me a t-shirt many years ago. Okay? I owned that t-shirt. It said, never forget, round is a shape. Okay? And while that's funnier than hell, who's more likely? When I do basic seminars and I'm talking to average everyday people, that we're not even talking about martial arts, right? And I say, what could you do if you were attacked? Hands will go up and stuff, and somebody will say, well, I could run. And I look at them and I watch them sit down and I go, can you run far, fast? Can you get 21 feet away within like 3 to 5 seconds? Because if you can't, if he needs to take less than 7 steps, he's going to stay on your ass. You need to get 7 steps. This is statistics are a bitch, right? You need to get 7 steps away before most opportunistic muggers will just call it a day because they're just going to wait for somebody easier. Okay. So can you run far, fast now? Well, no. Well, then you have to stand and fight. Somebody else will go, well, climb a fence. Can you climb a fence quickly? Well, no. Well, then you have to stand and fight. So you have fight skills, right? Okay. Or, sorry, ladies, got to hit you with one as well. Okay. Well, that's my husband or boyfriend's job. Now, I didn't hear it out loud, but I felt it across the cyberverse. My daughter, Trinity, just chuckled. Okay. She might have outright done one of her loud guffaws, but I heard the vibe. So what I usually say is, oh, so he is trained in self-defense. He can defend himself. And I swear, kid you not, right after I say that, they either go, yeah, right, or they laugh, whatever, right? And so usually I just smile and nod. But every once in a while, I can't help myself. Gozanze comes out, right? Fangs, 3 eyes, flames. And what I say is, did you just tell me that it's your husband or boyfriend's job to protect you, but they can't protect themselves? And then they get pissed off and walk away. Or they just stare at me before they walk away. Because ego doesn't think about the big picture when it's coming up with an excuse that works on most people. Okay. So for a lot of us, we're all going to age, right? What can you not do? Because if you're forced into a situation, that's your biggest disadvantage. So what can the training give you, and will you train consistently enough to reduce, minimize, or eliminate that problem? Because just because we can't do certain things a certain way, like I gave that example with Keisui and Ashitome, doesn't mean we can't do something that does the same thing. Okay? So I had a student, he just retired from training. He's been training with me since he was 45, 42, something like that. Richard Snyder. He's had like accidents out the wazoo, work accidents, those kind of things. He had a steer fall on him once because he was working this one job getting these things onto rail cars, right? Who slipped out on the floor and crashed down on him, pinned him between this falling steer and the boxcar wall. Right? He did logging and had a tree fall on him. All kinds of things. When I first met him, John Golan would remember this because John Golan was my first student in the States here. When Richard came to us, Richard had 2 rods, one in each leg, from surgery to put the bionic man back together again, right? Richard was the most consistent student that I think I've ever had. The only time he ever took off was during planting and or harvest season because he was a farmer, and during the heavy weeks when the seeds had to go in the ground or the stuff had to come out and go to market, he wasn't in class. But when I say consistent, I mean if he wasn't, and then that didn't turn into the habit of not doing anything because he had a morning routine. He also did Tai Chi and Ninjutsu at the same time for years. And so his morning routine involved doing a Tai Chi routine and practicing whatever the techniques we just did in class. And during time off, he still practiced consistently every morning. Kind of like Josh. At least I think so. I'm not there. But just because he didn't come to class didn't mean that practice didn't happen. The year and a half that went on between my teacher seeing me at one point and then seeing me again at a seminar in Tampa, Florida, where he thought I had quit. I practiced all the time. Just kept going through my notes, techniques, trying to get training groups together or training people and whatever, and convinced my military police unit. And again, I was stationed in Germany at that point. They wanted to do more than the standard self-defense things. And because there were only 2 of us that they knew of that were dedicated martial artist self-defense people or whatever, they couldn't have liability conscious things and whatnot, or, liability issues. And so, having somebody do Taekwondo, Tang Soo Do, kicks to the head and whatnot, was not deemed appropriate. So I put my name in the hat to be the unit self-defense instructor, which gave me mandatory members of a training group because they couldn't say no. They had to do the training. Okay. So anyway. All right, so let's get back to these pitfalls, to the fantasy versus function things, right? Somebody might say, but I can't do it like I used to. Okay, this is attachment to a past self that no longer exists. Okay, what if I get hurt? Well, you're already hurt. You're already tired. Welcome to the mission. Okay, the bad guy doesn't care. He's not going to go, oh, I'm sorry, this is not a good day. Okay, it's freaking hoping that you're broke, tired, whatever, right? Distracted, right? Mourning over the loss, whatever. Okay. Real world attackers aren't matching weight classes and making sure you're feeling strong that day. Okay. So we need to really think about this core concept, right? Reality based adaptation versus fantasy based expectations. Okay. I've been saying the whole time here that the ninja doesn't train for perfection. That's only half true, because I have the book out there for Seishin Teki Kyoyo, right? So as people, right, as human beings, we're training to be suprahuman, as in as human as it gets, firing on all faculties. But you know what? As we get older, maybe the body doesn't keep up. But we can work on our character. We can work on our awareness. We can work on all these other skills, right? That still not going to be perfect, but certainly closer than most people wandering around. Right? It's when things are going bad, right? Wishing and hoping, and right. So we need to trade these things out. Okay. And I'm going to frame this again. I make things sound odd anyway, so we'll just keep it going, right? So here's ninjutsu's gift, right? In all these conditions I outlined, right, we're going to need to adapt to the context. We're going to need to adapt to our condition, right? We're going to need to adapt because things aren't going to be perfect, right? So ninjutsu's gift is it was always about adaptation. Ninjutsu is not based on size, speed, or athleticism. Did the ninja do athletic things? Well, see, I used to think so. But what kind of ninja are we talking about? Because we've talked about this stuff over time as well. Are we talking about a genin ninja? Sure, because that's what most people want to fantasize about, right? The castle wall climbing, back flipping, stab him in the back, star throwing kind of ninja. Okay, the lone mercenary clearing out a hotel-size building of Uzi carrying mafia guys. Okay, so did they do things like that? Yeah, I'm sure. Up until a certain age, because scars and time are a bitch. Right? And the more battles these guys are in, more battles they see, the more this stuff they do to their body. Right? We have a joke in the dojo, right? John Gold and I talk about this. A bunch of people do, right? We talk about like being a little bit stiffer, not moving so quickly first thing in the morning and all that. And where most people would say, oh man, getting old's a bitch. That's not true. However, for a lot of us, it's not the age, it's the mileage. Okay? And we don't get oil changes. So this is not about these things, right? Tuning, middleman, right? And everybody does understand that Hatsumi Sensei has trained the seniors, right, to be jonin, and that's all we can teach everybody else to be. You can pick and choose to do only genin things, or at a certain point, or at certain jobs, you might light bulb turns on because you're managing people, right? Tune-in level tactics. But ultimately, he's a jonin. Hi, man, right? We're all trained. Well, my peer set, we're all trained to one day be able to start our own ninja organization because we were trained to be jonin. Gaining can only be gaining. Chunin, maybe. Jonin, of course, they have physical techniques, manipulation, strategy, those kind of things. But an entire ninja organization could fall apart. Just like with a queen bee, you can have a new hive fairly quickly. But one Jonin. So it's a different mindset, right? This is not, from this Jonin perspective, this is a thinking art. Even for gaining, right? Quick on your feet, problem solver, think James Bond, MacGyver, that kind of thing, right? But even if it were based on size and speed and athleticism at certain points or at certain jobs or roles or whatever, right? We all get old. We all get injured. Right? We all get ill. Right? We all end up having quick catastrophes and right, fires encroaching on our dojo. It's a thinking art, right? Which is why I'm always harping on strategic thinking. Right? This art doesn't ask if you're fast. It asks if you can deceive. It asks if you can maneuver, right? Use tricky timing, that kind of thing, right? Doesn't ask if you can overpower somebody. It asks if you can outmaneuver. Of course, if your answer is no, well, it's going to teach you how to do that, right? It doesn't ask if you're pain-free. It asks if you can still move, if you can still breathe, and if you can still make decisions. Right? Hatsumi Sensei has said also, right? Anywhere you are, you can do ninjutsu. I would also add, any way you are, you can do ninjutsu. Right? Contrast this with most sport martial arts, where, depending on the organization, somewhere between 32 and 35, you're in the senior division and either get all kinds of handicap points if you're going up against 20-something, or you don't go up against 20-somethings. 32? Jesus Christ, I'm 30 years older than that. Okay. So, and I'm only speaking to those who know I'm talking to them, right? It's time to drop the ego. It's time to pick up the mission, right? For a lot of folks, it's time to let go of the person you used to be. It's time to let go of the fantasy of how perfect training should look, right? It's time to let go of the idea that there's a right time or condition when you'll be ready to get serious. Okay? What we need to pick up is what still works, what can be improved, and what skills actually keep you alive. What can you do? Right? The other thing I was told a long time ago, I was a white belt, right? Every ninja has his or her own network, right? Ninja network. They don't even have to know that they're ninja. We've talked about this. There's ninja classified in the Bansen Shukai and the Shininki, right, that were used by the clan. These people didn't even know that they were operatives. And a lot of them would have been highly offended or probably killed themselves if they found out they were being used that way. But that network doesn't have to be other ninja, right? We can always be increasing our network of people. And then when I say people with different skills, that doesn't mean that you have to have like a checklist of carpenter, plumber, secret agent, whatever, right? But engaging with the people in our lives and knowing what their background is and knowing what even interest and hobbies they have, because we never know what we might need in any given situation. This is what it means to be a ninja. Not just fight moves. Because the fight we're in might not be one where kicking and punching and shooting and stabbing and all that kind of shit are going on. The number of people in this art that I have seen wrecked because of life conditions not actual physical assaults, staggering. Okay. So this is where I'd be talking about our bridge to Whiteboard Wednesday, but things are up in the air. I mean, if I can get into this other place and set up something quickly and do something on Wednesday, I'll do a Whiteboard Wednesday, but I can't make any guarantees. So I'll not discuss it. But as soon as I can get back on it, I'm definitely going to be doing an episode on how this art allows us to compensate for injury, age, physical limitation, right? All of these things that people use as crutches, reasons, excuses, whatever, right? Because it teaches us how to like develop the knowledge and understanding of how to make decisions and build movement chains, right, with the body that don't rely on being a 20-year-old athlete, right? How to mentally outmaneuver somebody, right? Another core piece, or core lesson I got as a white belt, which is why I try to give this to people as soon as they come into my sphere. You may not be a white belt because you got promoted by somebody else, but in my realm, until I know what your skill set is, you're getting the same lessons I'd give a white belt, because I can't guarantee you get them from somebody else. And this other lesson is that a ninja takes control long before the attacker ever realizes that he lost it. That is not a physical thing. By the time his hands get on you, double lapel grab, wrist grab, or whatever, right? White belts, one step at a time, right? So he grabs you. Here's how we want to release that grip, move to a safer spot, so you make his job harder and harder, right? Should be harder the second time he tries to do something to you than it was the first time he snuck up on you or just, surprised you or whatever. But for black belts, upper level guys, you're in motion the moment he's trying to grab you, so he never gets a perfect grab. You're in motion the moment the strike would be hitting, so even if it does land, he never gets a perfect strike. Those kind of things. This is an art of taking things away from the attacker, not trying to trick the attacker so you can get something in on him. We take so many things away from them that we neutralize any advantage they ever had, because we can't gain an advantage we don't have, right? If he is bigger, stronger, faster, all that kind of stuff, then if we fight the same way, we're screwed, because we can't create more of that which we don't have in that moment. So we need to start exploring this stuff from a different perspective, right? The real strength of this art, right, is tactical thinking, strategic thinking, adaptive training. You have what you have. How do you use it? Because you're not a ninja, you're not Bond, and you're not MacGyver if you can't use what you have to create a solution in the moment. If we have to wait for delivery, if we have to wait until we get the right supplies, if we have to, what? Wait until we feel like it? Motivation's a lie, right? I'm not quite motivated. Who cares? Okay. What do you do? Tell the attacker, just don't feel it today. Yeah. So anyway, try to look for those things in training. Try to take advantage of, you come home tired. Great. Okay. You want to sit around, lay around? Great. Okay. If somebody busted in right now and you had a hard time getting up, or they got to jump on you, how would you defend from that position? Or even a more weird one, because the adrenal response is going to make you move into an odd or even more odd position. Now, how do you get out of that one if they're on you? How do you, right? How do you hide weapons around your house so the kids can't get to them and they're not an eyesore to every visitor that comes in, but you've thought about certain conditions like having to put your hands up or sit there, shut up, don't move. They've already patted you down. but you always have a weapon handy. Okay. Anyway, that's what I have for this one. So let's open it up to questions, comments, Sensei, you're full of shit, those kind of things, right? So, James, what do you got? You know, you can ask questions and throw out comments as well, but I know you're just all ears. James is like our non-talker in the dojo. See him adjust his glasses. He's recording us, recording him. My wife has a pair of those glasses, by the way. We go on vacation. Yeah,
Really?
My wife takes pictures in places where you're not supposed to take pictures because it says no cameras. But she's always adjusting her glasses. Just has to make sure that the little clicker sound is off. Yeah. Yeah, if you've ever seen if you're ever out and we're doing something or whatever, we could be at a fair or whatever, and you see my wife like holding a pair of sunglasses up in the air, right? Yeah, she has it on, and there are a bunch of people in front of her, and they won't let her in so she can take. So she's anyway. What do we got?
Trinity said.
Go ahead.
Trin said, when I had a partner, he was in wrestling and BJJ. I used to kick his ass. Then he would complain that I don't fight fair. Had a partner is the key word here.
Maybe you're a multiple college graduate. I would hope that you know that there was more than one word there. That was a key phrase. Anyway, sorry.
Josh said he calls his AM routine his morning cup of coffee.
That's cool. Yeah, one of my teachers used to say, he'd be talking about techniques or whatever. He goes, I don't care if you call it Bobby Jean or Bubba, or if you call it by the Japanese name, as long as we're on the same sheet of music, right? As long as it's working for you. Morning coffee. That's awesome. What else?
Dave put lazy boy no kamae.
Lazy boys are difficult to get out of, so you better get really, really good at maneuvering in that comfy cushion. It's kind of like when you're fighting on the ground. The taijutsu for fighting on the ground is most of the principles are almost 180 degrees in the opposite direction, or opposite of what you would be doing while you're standing. And the reason for that is because when you're standing, your taijutsu has to focus on neutralizing the force of gravity, maintaining balance, right? Being stable, but also free to move and whatnot. If you're on the ground, in most instances, he can't break your balance. You don't have to worry about your balance being broken, right? You don't have to neutralize gravity. It already has you, that kind of thing, right? But once you're down on the ground, what position are you in? Because most people train on their back. But what if you're face down? I remember one time we were working on defenses where you were face down and the attacker had you from around from behind up under your jaw and a knee in your lower back, yanking you into this reversed arch kind of position. And we were training to get out. But you could be on your side. Okay. Think about the positions that our techniques put an uke in. Because at a certain point in our training, we have to be the uke to learn how to beat or at least escape from or neutralize all of our techniques. Because if you don't, you only know the technique half. You only know half of it. Right? If you can't beat a technique, if you can't defend against a certain weapon or whatever, then you haven't mastered that weapon. Okay? Because we have to explore. Everybody wants to gravitate toward the advantages and the like what this weapon does for me. Yeah, well, what if you're facing that weapon? What are its disadvantages? How do you exploit them? How do you create them? How do you expose them when he's really, really good? Okay. So I know this was kind of backwards, but this is the Oda side of training. Assuming disadvantage. Ego doesn't like that. Ego wants to assume control. I learned all this cool stuff. I will always have the upper hand. You know? Pride goes before the fall, as they say. Hatsum Sensei wrote an article a bunch of years ago. That was the title of it. Anyway, what else we got?
Oh, that was
wow. And we have the numbers that we have? Jesus. Usually I say shit like that and people are like, screw this, I'm out of here. Anyway, so, you know, people often send me messages and stuff like, kudos to you, dude, for the abuse you take and stuff, and you just keep on going. It's what I do. And it's not abuse, because I don't take advice or slander or anything from anybody that I wouldn't ask for advice from. Or I wouldn't, you know, I'm certainly not taking criticism from them if I wouldn't ask them for advice. And what they're telling me is this condition, this state, this age, this whatever they're knocking in that moment, they're afraid of getting to. They don't use those words. Never going to let that happen to me. And they would already have stopped training a long time ago. So who then would have the advantage? Well, I already have the advantage because they've assumed my disadvantage. I understand my disadvantages a lot, which is why my training is not always like what I'm giving my students. So, anything else? Well, thanks for coming back for take 2 of episode 263, right? We got through this one without Alan throwing a monkey in our wrench, right? I didn't want to have to think that maybe he started the fire. We didn't start the... but see, Alan, there are people that make you look like a king. I'm messing with you, man. Alan will walk in the dojo, make a statement or whatever, and he's like, it's like being back in the Corps or being back on the block as a CO. Duh. Because that builds mental resiliency. If you're not only is this not the art, but the art that I grew up in, we were always training. And that doesn't mean on the dojo floor. We're always training. We were always developing skill sets. We were always, whether it was mental, emotional, physical, whatever. One, everything's a test. Life is just nothing but a series of tests. 2, you're always being tested. Always, never not being tested. 3, we're always training. The question is, what are we training for? Are we training to be adaptable and able to, I don't know, make lemonade out of the lemons, right? Or are we training to be unaware, lazy, not adaptable? Are we training to lose? Are we training? Right. I know what we're teaching, but that doesn't mean the students learning the same lesson. They can be hearing the words, they can be watching the techniques, they can be watching how their teacher does things and still not be learning the lesson. And anybody who's a parent knows that to be true, because you can teach the lessons and your kids could still not learn them, or they pick them up later or whatever. Okay? Chris McLaurin and a bunch of you guys know that hands down. Try to bring your knowledge and wisdom and stuff from past stupidity. You thought it was enlightenment then, but just like I did, right? Try to share it, but okay. So, all right, is that it? Is that what we got? We're good.
Alan said he's not Billy Joel and he's practicing rolls from his chair. And Dave said cinnamon rolls.
Wow. Well, it's not like some of the stuff we've had on, so apparently I'm trusting you to filter out things that are just, stupid and whatnot. But if we can't be the comic relief, we can at least, be alluring enough to some of the comics to be the comic reliefs. Freaking fracking. Anyway, all right. So that's it, guys. We're going to keep moving forward. If you're a local student or you're just, kind of paying attention and whatnot, I will have updates here. We're looking, hopefully this week, we will be in a place to do things. I was going to make myself available tomorrow morning for training with some folks, but I think I'm going to have to pass on that because I've got too much to do that has to get done. Last week just threw things off, and those things had to be done, but that also required that other things got put on the back burner that are now at the top of the list for priorities. So anyway, I think that's it. So I will talk to everybody again next week. I don't know what the topic's going to be. If anybody posts some questions or whatever that stand out, then maybe. If not, I don't know. James will come up with something. All right. That's it. I'll see you next week on KUDEN. Get more of KUDEN Radio. Subscribe through your favorite podcasting site or join our clan of serious modern warriors at onlineninjaacademy.com.